Hey guys, Super Nintendo here, and this is Nights into Dreams for the Sega Saturn, a game that you guys voted on my Twitter of what game I should play next. So, is it a good game? Well, the controller looked pretty cool. This is a 3D controller, which, believe it or not, beat Nintendo 64 to market on. So technically, this is the first controller with an analog stick. But you probably didn't know that, and you thought Nintendo 64 was the first to come out with that. And basically with Nintendo's Super Mario 64, I'm not surprised that you didn't know that. So is Nights into Dreams worth playing for the Sega Saturn? Let's take a look. I didn't own a Sega Saturn when it first came out, but I do remember Nights being a flagship title for the system. So when I finally got a Sega Saturn, Nights into Dreams was one of the first games that I bought. I didn't have any nostalgic ties to the Saturn, so I wasn't exactly sure how I would enjoy this game. One of the cool things about Nights is that it takes advantage of a 3D controller for the Sega Saturn. The 3D controller actually beat the Nintendo 64 to market, making this the first controller with an analog stick. Of course, a lot of people credit Nintendo with making the analog stick the standard, and that's true since an N64 controller was included with the system and integrated into almost every game for that console. Since the 3D controller was introduced a year or so after the release of Saturn, and not included with the console at any point during its lifespan, the 3D controller felt flat and becoming another great idea poorly executed. So on to Nights into Dreams. Nights into Dreams has a lot of research poured into it. The team researched dreaming and REM sleep and also looked into theories by Sigmund Freud. You play as either Clarice or Elliot. Each nightmare has 4 mares and a boss at the end of it. Each stage has all the mares built into it, you just travel across a set path. And this makes things confusing as the mares have their obstacles drawn and you might want to go down a specific path but you can't because you can only either go right or left. Mostly right though. Each path is a loop back to the starting area. You have to collect enough chips to destroy an idea capture which houses the stolen dream energy. And then you have to make it back to the idea palace, which is the starting point before the time runs out. Once you make it back to the palace, the score is tallied, then you're immediately tasked to start the next mare. There's a time limit to each level, and it's kind of bogus if we're being honest. Hitting each enemy will take 5 seconds off the timer, but you can't really tell which are enemies and which are helpers. Also, the time limit does prevent you from fully exploring the level, but there's not a lot in each stage since the game is on rails. If the timer does run out, you turn back into Clarice or Elliot and have to walk back to either monster you're trying to defeat or back to the base to return your ideas, which are these spherical objects that contain an emotion before the secondary timer runs out. Run out of both timers and it's game over and you're kicked back to the start menu. In addition to that, the game will let you know how well or how bad you did at the end of each level by giving you a ranking. These ranges from A, which is the best, to F, which is the worst, and I really don't like rankings because in the most cases the deductions for infractions are way too costly. Also, if you fail to get a B average on the levels, you must do it all over again before advancing. After finishing the 4th mare, you're transported to the boss of the dream, and this is where things get weird. Once again, you have a time limit, but this time the objective is not 100% clear. It's a jarring experience because the stage is drastically different from the first 4 mares. Instead of running on a rail, you're now free to explore the level and take out the boss. However, each boss is different and it's not very obvious on how to kill it. Also, if you run out of time before you kill the boss, you'll get a tip on how to defeat said boss and then have the 4 mares to think about how to defeat that boss. That's right, if you fail to kill the boss in one go, you need to go all the way back to the beginning of the stage. They couldn't implement a live system instead? It seems pretty tedious to me. I guess the good thing is that these levels are only about 2 minutes long, but still it's kind of frustrating. Overall, I didn't really care too much for this game, and I was going to give it a scathing review, but I decided to play it one more time after reading reviews of this game. It's a very high rated game and on a lot of best game of all time lists. I didn't really get why it got such high reviews and I still don't. The game's controls are difficult and sometimes the perspective changes to mess with your eyes. In my opinion, this game doesn't really deserve the praise that it gets. Don't get me wrong, this game was a marvel for its time, but it just doesn't hold up in modern day. That being said, Knights is worth at least to try so that you can appreciate how far 3D games have come. Currently it's about $45 for the complete in box without the 3D controller. The 3D controller will run you an extra $20 to $80 depending on the condition and style, but it's not really necessary to play Knights. And the controller is a goofy conversation piece of gaming history. So that's Nights into Dreams. As you can tell, I was not very impressed with this game. I had really high hopes for it. Even as a kid, when I saw it, I definitely thought it was revolutionary, but as with most early 3D games like that, it didn't really stand the test of time. So, do I recommend it? Only if you're a hardcore Sega Saturn person. So what game should I play next? Your 4 choices this time are Conker's Bad Fur Day for the Nintendo 64, Guardian Legend for the Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Back to the Future for the Super Famicom, and Space Channel 5 for the Sega Dreamcast. So leave a comment down below on which game I should review next, or you can vote on Twitter at SnickTendo. I'll have a poll up there for a couple of days after this video is published. And then after the votes are all tallied, I'll provide you with a review. So if you like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you're new here, please subscribe. I'm Super Nintendo, and I'll see you next time.